So is the mic working? Yes, it is. I just love all the chairs behind me and all that. Is Sabrina in the room from King? No, she had this wonderful talk earlier where she was really trying to get the audience interactive and she was wondering why everyone was quiet. And I also had that same thought when I was working at Nokia for 8 years. How could this be the dominant mobile phone company over the last, in the early 2000s, late 90s? And who are they talking to? They're on the phone, but who are they talking to? The Finns were very quiet as a population. So what I'm covering here at this session was, Chris was asking me, okay, can you talk about some industry trends and what you're seeing, and also what's happening with things like Pokemon Go and what's afterwards. So, hands up if you haven't played Pokemon Go. Okay, only a few. I was in the US yesterday. I flew over here deliberately just because I wanted to get the Pokemon that's only available in Europe. So, let's get into it. So, where am I now? So Verve Mobile, it's a Qualcomm and Nokia funded company working specifically in location-based mobile advertising. It's existed for about 10 years and we're working, looks like Pocket Gamer didn't check the fonts. They told me that the deck was perfect. Okay, so we're working with the top 10 retailers, US CPG, global CPG, US auto, and fundamentally we've been working in location-based mobile advertising for about 10 years, and not directly with game companies, but mainly with retailers and advertisers and brands. So the question I have for the audience here is how much money do you think has been spent or planned to be spent in mobile advertising in, let's say, 2019, just in the US alone? How much money do you think is getting spent in that industry or intended to be spent? Any question? Okay, no answers. Interactive audience. It's about 50 billion is just being spent only in the US alone in mobile advertising. And so it's a market that's expanding quite a lot. One thing that we did at Verve earlier this year is, just a couple of months ago, is that we acquired a beacon company. We've been focusing so much on location, which is about driving people into retail stores, that we looked at what can we do next and what's needed for this to succeed, to actually get that more advertising dollars coming in. And we acquired a beacon company, Roximity. They're used in Starbucks stores, Ford auto dealerships, Walmart, pretty much all across the US. And we wanted to acquire that company to accelerate what's happening with location. And again, location? Why location? Well, our view fundamentally is that if you're doing advertising and you don't have location information, you're just doing digital advertising. With location, you can get so much more context and you can get better understanding of what the consumer is actually doing. So to this talk, now my role at Verve and why I was brought in was basically to look at what's happening in the future, what are the trends, and what are things that we need to be aware of. And I have a lot of freedom to actually do this and basically see, okay, what should we invest in and what should we partner with and look at. And so together with my team, I put together what's known as points of views. Now, these are points of view that we're seeing happening in the industry, and we also get to see what advertisers and big brands are doing and what they're coming to us, asking us about. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these. For this session, I didn't know how long it was going to be until recently, where they said it's actually 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to narrow it down, but we're fundamentally looking at what's the new stuff happening in gaming and ad units, what's happening in Internet of Things in terms of advertising, AI platforms, shared screens, what's the new innovations happening in TV. The ones in the middle are the ones which I fundamentally will look at, things like loyalty, indoor location, natural interfaces, connected cars and smart cities. And then finally at the bottom you can see some other aspects about advertising going social, user revolt happening against advertising, what's happening with wearables and so forth. But these are points of view that we look at what's happening in the space. Now, when you look at what's happening out there in terms of retail, and we pick a vertical such as QSR, quick service restaurants, we pick a random QSR, the typical way that retail and these QSRs are doing marketing is typically direct mail marketing. They mail out maybe millions of dollars worth of coupons or letting people know about a new campaign and trying to drive that into retail. they have difficulty tracking that. And what they did in partnering with Verve, to give you a sense, is that we've got access to like hundreds of millions of consumers. Our SDK is on thousands of apps, high-quality apps, and we have a sense of who the audience is, what age group they are, where they're going, and where they're playing. So they give us the data of, anonymously about what people they set the direct marketing campaign to. We see how that matches to our data, and then we send them a message when they're close to one of these QSR restaurants. And the results that we saw from this was that it actually blew out their campaign expectations by actually tying that traditional mechanism with actually a digital mobile location-focused mechanism where you geofence locations around the country. So how's this relevant? It's actually showing that there's all this marketing money, advertising money, that's out there on retail, driving people to locations, which isn't yet really being made available to the gaming industry. Typically, I see advertising in gaming fundamentally being really much around performance advertising, advertising other people's games, and so forth. This link between physical retail and physical goods tied to actually digital worlds hasn't really been explored until what happened with Pokemon Go. Is this actually getting serious attention from the brands and the retailers? Well, when you go to a place like Target and you actually start seeing these things out there, I guess everyone recognises the ball down the bottom. So Target, one of their Target stores actually, which was a Pokestop, actually started to advertise it. Hey, we're a Pokestop. Now, I don't know if the phenomena is been happening here in Finland and so forth, but I know in the US, when I'm going around local pubs and bars and all that, they're putting out signs saying, hey, we're a Pokestop, and by the way, between 2 to 4, we're going to have a happy hour if you come up here as well. They also start advertising in their billboards that we're going to put out lures. We're going to put out lures every Saturday and Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Come over here and visit. So they're advertising it and they're trying to drive people to the retail. So this phenomena of getting people into the retail, driving foot traffic is what we're seeing take off. You also get the situation, and this is where I go into this POV around the gaming ad unit, is we actually see the situation where you got Niantic working with their Pokemon Go, which is based on Ingress naturally, looking at partnering with companies like McDonald's and fundamentally targeting retail stores with locations which are actually matched with the virtual world that they've got with Pokemon to actually, again, drive traffic and bring that branding in. So you're bringing this blending of retail, real physical locations to the digital world. I've noticed that my timer isn't working down here for the back of the AV side, so just indicating that. So I'll start again. I guess it's because we started 20 minutes late. Okay, so that's happening with the gaming ad unit. And so to show how at this event, I haven't had too many comments around location here from the presentations. They've said it's basically maybe it's a one-off or something like that. I'm getting brands, large brands coming to us and saying, okay, we're interested in doing campaigns, but we actually want to start looking and thinking about how we tie to game developers and what game companies are actually doing location-based games. And they're trying to tie in this aspect that, okay, how do we tie our physical retail stores and locations to actually driving traffic to them, and how do you blend that virtual location in the game world to the physical goods that are unsold, and how do you tie that together? Well, one thing that we've seen develop quite a lot and thinking about is the use of loyalty. Loyalty is becoming quite important to the brands, and some of the brands are saying that they're considering maybe dropping their app development and actually just focusing on using the wallet capabilities that are coming in Google and in Apple, and developing the loyalty cards, but then also the coupons as well. So loyalty is something that we're seeing is very big, and what we see is that tying mobile geolocation generated with the device's GPS in conjunction with mobile wallets, NFC payment, and beacons to tie in the fact that you know the consumer is in there, they're a loyal consumer. This is something which we're seeing has been very powerful and very important to the brands, and could be something that could be incorporated into your game, that it doesn't necessarily only need to be about the physical, the virtual rewards you have in the game, but how you actually can tie that to physical rewards as well. As I mentioned, indoor location, we're seeing these beacons getting rolled out, and one thing that we learned pretty much during 2016 this year is that 80% of the top 50 retailers, 80% of the top 100 retailers in the US have a plan to roll out beacons now or have done already by the end of this year. Out of the top 200 retailers with more than 50 million in revenue, 85% of them have said that they're going to roll out beacons or plan to by the end of 2016. There's also indications that the impact of beacons just in retail is expected to be about $40 billion in terms of influencing sales. So there's a big impact in terms of what indoor technologies and beacons can have to retail. So that's a trend that we're seeing as well. Why is all this important? All boils down to this aspect of you have an ad displayed on the actual device. The retailers and brands are fundamentally trying to see, okay, how does this lead to a path to purchase? And then some purchase mechanism, payment mechanism has taken place. Maybe it's done by the mobile wallet. And what they can finally see is that for the advertising dollars being spent, that there's a direct attribution taking place. So attribution is quite important, and we'll see more and more of this starting to take place during this year and the next year about these full closed loop attribution. Now, eSports, after this session here, we've got some more topics on eSports, but this is a trend that we're also seeing very much, that there's a big interest in eSports. Colleges are now starting to actually offer eSports scholarships. Even my own teenage son is actually starting to apply for colleges for an eSports scholarship. I don't know, necessarily thought that was a good idea or not, but I try to support him, but eSports is one of the big trends that we're seeing. I'm not going to go too much on this. You're going to hear much more about it later on, but it's one of the ones that we've identified here. Big question. When I was here in the summer, this wasn't the case. Like, are you able to buy the Echo in Finland yet? Still, no? Okay. So this device here is the Amazon Echo, and Amazon has been investing a lot in new technologies recently. They've talked about delivering drones, like mail and deliveries through drones, but this is about natural interfaces. And I have to say, when we got one of these for the home late last year, it really changed the environment in our kitchen. Everyone was interacting with it, and it's almost like the Siri experience that you have on your phone, but it's much more rich, much more enjoyable, and like having the kids every morning basically ask, okay, tell me a joke, Siri. No, sorry, not tell me a joke, Siri, but tell me a joke, Alexa. It's very, very enjoyable, and recently, just over the weekend, Amazon released a gaming skill for the Echo, and that gaming skill was to allow developers to actually develop, let's say, play by choice adventure games that you might have played as early this century or last century, when you would just choose your own adventure stuff. And they released a skill, they call this stuff skills, where you can actually easily create games that can be played through natural interfaces, voice interfaces on the Echo. And the system is Alexa, Microsoft's got Cortana, Apple Siri, and there's a lot of money that's getting invested into this space. And they're fundamentally looking at it as another form of interface that you have to your app and that you can engage with it. And so I'm looking forward to actually seeing the types of games that will come from this that will be interesting to look at. From an advertising perspective, this suddenly becomes very interesting because of the fact that you can suddenly look at ordering directly from the Amazon store the types of items that you want, or you can look at other elements that might be interesting that require natural interfaces. So it's a very, very big trend, this, and a lot of investment is going into it. ARVR, like we saw with Pokemon Go, it's like the first successful AR game. What I found interesting and unembarrassed about it is that I was a big Ingress player, which was a game that Niantic used before they brought out Pokemon Go to actually crowdsource all the locations. I actually didn't know there was an AR mode in Pokemon Go until I started seeing all the pictures out there. I was just playing it in virtual mode. To me, it was a location-based game. And then there was the AR mode. I said, oh yeah, this is quite fun, but it kept on crashing and everything like that. But it's fascinating how some are calling it location, some are calling it AR. But with the investments that are happening from Samsung, Microsoft, I recommend anyone who hasn't tried it yet, try a HoloLens if you can get your hands on it. It's probably the most amazing experience I've seen in VR that Microsoft has made available. The only problem is you can buy them, but they don't ship them to Europe. So it's a bit of a problem there. But we're seeing, again, a lot of questions coming from brands about how you tap AR experiences into their retail, into the different apps that could actually be working with them. The other one we're also seeing a lot of work on is the connected car. And this is going to be really interesting because you see the earlier example of Alexa and natural interfaces. That's been a situation where Amazon has signed deals with different automotive manufacturers to get the Alexa technology into those cars, and what these cars are now fundamentally providing is much more telematic information. You can build some fascinating connected car experiences or game experiences which are tied into cars. And one of the projects I did like 15 years ago was actually backseat gaming, where you're playing against players and you're in the backseat of the car, they go past each other and you're throwing like I know, like bombs and so forth at your other players and things like that. So this is something that is starting to look quite interesting. And this taps into the smart cities. Here in Scandinavia, I've had the luxury of living both in Sweden and Finland. There was a lot of this smart city thinking in these countries. I remember that being used very much even 15 years ago. In the US, it's not the case. Like this is a topic that has only just recently come. But President Obama, one of the things he just did recently was basically allocate tens and tens of millions of dollars around to invest in smart cities. So there's about 16 or so smart cities which have been selected. And some of the things that these smart cities are doing, like San Diego, where I live, is one of them, is that they're starting to do these hackathons, a smart city hackathon. And what they're doing is they're making all the infrastructure data publicly available. So you could get things about like what is the routing of all the garbage trucks through the city, what is the actual histogram or heat map of which suburbs actually do recycling of rubbish and which suburbs don't do recycling of actual rubbish. And they're looking for new applications that can utilize all that technology. That amount of data is a dream for developers that actually want to take in and do location-based games or want more context in the games that they actually develop. So a lot of investment actually coming through in the smart city side, and a lot of interesting hackathons that are being made available for you to play with that. So that's something you should also look into to see how you can tap into that. So as I said, I couldn't go through all of them, but these were some of the trends that I'm seeing, what the brands are actually talking about. The biggest thing I want you to walk away from listening to the talk that I've had here is that there's a lot of brands out there, there's a lot of money in retail, there's a lot of opportunity in how you blend virtual with real, and there is like a desire for things more than just Pokemon Go alone. There's like a big interest there. So end with a pitch, as it is. There's my email. You can tweet out to me, and thank you, Chris.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom. Mark, can I just say, Mark, those are comfortably the most beautiful slides I've ever seen. You've worked on those a little bit, haven't you?
I always work on slides.
They're very beautiful. Thank you so much. That was a really fascinating talk. I know if we'd given you an hour, you could have done.
We need to do it.
Are we selfieing?
Yeah, that's right. Stand up and put a thumbs up, everyone.
Thumbs up. Okay, we're selfieing. Come on. Be anti-fin. There we go. It's good.
There you go. Good. Smile. Excellent.
Excellent. Fantastic. Great. Good work. Thank you very much. Mark will be available for questions. We're a bit behind, so you can. He's perfectly on time. Thank you so much indeed.